Hola, everyone, and thank you for landing on this Conversation Café episode. This is a division of Avant Consulting and Training. I am its founder and president and host, Dr. Gerardo Gauthier-Zayas. My pronouns are he, him, él. Audience members, welcome to our second of 4 Conversation Café live panel series, Leadership, Authenticity, and Social Identity in the Workplace, a Male Perspective. This live panel is a division of Avant Consulting and Training. We are excited to announce that these live panels really are trying to serve as a supplement to our brand new relaunched Conversation Cafe podcast, now available on Spotify and YouTube. The podcast, this and future live panel series are really designed as a space for us to have honest dialogue, share wisdom, and really start talking about learning about our communities around some of the most pressing and transformative topics in leadership today. If you are interested in receiving notifications about our next panel or our podcast, please click like now. To help us better understand the diverse perspectives in the room, we like to ask a few questions about you and today's topic. So your responses are confidential, audience members, and will be used in aggregate to inform future Conversation Cafe sessions. What this does is ensures our discussions reflect the experiences of a wide range of participants. You may skip any questions you do not wish to answer. Okay, everyone, thank you in advance for taking the time to complete the survey. Your input is valuable. And again, it helps us shape the conversations moving forward. And definitely without a doubt, together we'll building spaces where authentic leadership and diverse voices are seen, heard, and valued. So we're going to jump in. Today, we are thrilled you are here to help us kick off this 4-part series, the second of 4, with our panel, Leadership, Authenticity, and Social Identities in the Workplace, a Male Perspective. Today's panel brings together incredible leaders whose professional and lived experiences reflect not only expertise in their fields, but also the resilience, authenticity, and courage required to really navigate leadership as men in diverse workplaces. Their voices and perspectives are essential in helping us better understand how identity intersects with leadership and how authenticity can foster trust and inclusion on how social identities shape workplace dynamics. Our panelists are truly exceptional in their perspective, lived experiences, and subject matter expertise. Each brings a wealth of conceptualizing, planning, and launching their expertise, whether through years of leadership practice, research, or organizational change, or even building brave spaces to honor community engagement, combined with lived experiences of navigating leadership roles as men across various industries and social identities. So this unique combination of knowledge and authenticity allows them to speak not just to theory, but the real everyday realities of leading with courage, navigating challenges, and shaping workplaces where inclusion and equity are possible. Without further ado, let me share a little bit about the background of our esteemed panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Kamaru Abubakar. He's a prominent leader and a dedicated advocate for equitable education with over a decade of proven experience in higher education, administration, policy development, and creating inclusive learning environments. As a proud Muslim, Ghanaian American, Dr. Abubakar holds a doctorate degree in higher education administration from New England College alongside an MBA from Clark University, a Master's of Education in Leadership and Administration from Loyola University in Chicago, and a Bachelor's of Science from the University of Vermont. He effectively blends academic expertise with practical leadership skills to confront and dismantle systemic challenges in education. In his current role as Associate Dean of Students at Clark University, Dr. Abubakar drives innovative policies, reforms, and manages resources strategically and develops impactful programs that significantly enhance student engagement and well-being. His initiatives have consistently led to improved institutional efficiencies, heightened stakeholder satisfaction, and the reinforcement of ethical governance. He is also, with all his time that he has available, he is also the CEO of Kamina Institute. He's the youngest of 12 children. Dr. Abubakar recognizes education as a critical foundation for nurturing well-rounded individuals and actively promoting equity and access. His staunch commitment to education, community services propels his work forward. Motivated by a desire to give back to underserved populations, he returned to Ghana. He collaborated with local administrators and community leaders, including the chief, to deliver essential resources such as desks, books, and clothing for primary and secondary school students. This initiative has not only brought him immense fulfillment, but it also has deepened his resolve to uplift communities through education. Dr. Abubakar remains unwavering in his engagement with community, embodying a relentless commitment to fostering positive change And as a versatile professional with exceptional negotiation skills, he's exceptionally equipped to make significant contributions across diverse sectors. So welcome, Dr. Kamaru Abubakar.
Thank you.
Next panelist, we have Michael Preston. Michael Preston is the Director of Community Affairs and Engagement at Johns Hopkins University in Medicine. He has spent his life both professionally and personally bringing people together to solve complex problems and really build equity where it didn't exist. From city halls to community centers, boardrooms to neighborhood blocks, Michael has built a career uniting unlikely partners around shared goals. Across sectors and decades, he has also helped drive work that's challenging yet deeply needed and necessary to bring people together and make community engagement and progress happen. In Michael's current role as Director of Community Affairs for Johns Hopkins University in Medicine, he leads community engagement and strategic partnerships that improves health, education, wealth, and safety of residents and communities through far-reaching community-based initiatives. He is known as the convener, connector, and collaborator, someone who truly integrates people, shared purpose, and data into initiatives that create equity and positive impacts. His strengths lies in the ability to assess the situation and quickly identify goals and objectives, develop benchmarks, timelines, and a roadmap for success, and execute plans that integrate the resources and abilities for all partners. I'm also happy to share that Michael is currently pursuing a doctorate in educational leadership at Merrimack College, as going back to school for him at this point in his career isn't just about adding credentials, it truly is about staying fresh, engaged, and informed. His intent and goal are to bring sharper tools to the work he cares most about, equitable community engagement, and strategic partnerships. Welcome, Michael Preston. And also, lastly, the third panelist here is Francisco Angelo, or Francisco Angelo, if you can't do the Haas. In my case, I gladly do Francisco Angelo. So Francisco believes that diversity and mental health work in tandem, when combined together, they provide a change, right? He has experience helping clients find the way forward. He has worked in New York City schools and community-based organizations throughout the city, providing anti-racist strategies to individuals in New England for over 10 years. Francisco holds a master's degree in conflict resolution from Columbia University with a concentration in U.S. civil rights. He has participated in educational initiatives in Kenya, Ecuador, India, and Senegal. He also has facilitated extensive conflict resolution courses within Mass Department of Corrections through the Alternatives Through Violence Project. He's created restorative justice approaches to conflict within the New York City public school systems and has co-facilitated cross-cultural conversations on gentrification in Harlem. I want to thank each of you really for joining this live conversation. Your presence here to me and to the audience members out there who are listening or who are viewing this video after we finish this live panel, your presence really does signify the commitment to refining leadership practice, to value authenticity and equity. So I invite you, the panel, and the audience out there, to not just to listen, but to engage. So your questions, reflections, and insights will really help enrich the conversation for all of us. So throughout today's panel, if you have a question or a comment, please place it in the chat room, and I will present it to the panelists after we've completed today's engagement. So after the panelist engagement, we will open up the space for participant engagement, then ask for your feedback to help shape our conversation based on the collective community and voices in it. Panelists, brilliance, your professional achievements, and your lived stories make this an extraordinary conversation that I am so proud to host and engage and be a part of. So I want to finally say a heartfelt thank you to you all. Your brilliance, professional achievements, and lived experience makes this, again, the conversation worth diving into. So let's start off with the first question. So the question I have, Dr. Kamaru, is what is your definition of authentic leadership to you? And how has your identity as a man shaped your understanding of it?
Great. Again, thank you so much for having me and inviting me to this wonderful conversation. To me, it means a lot. And that would go into some of the response that I will have today, because everything that I do, my identity as a Black man, as a Ghanaian American, has a lot to do with how I lead and the things that I do. So with your question in terms of authentic leadership, is bringing your whole self, who you are as an individual, because your identity, again, is something you cannot hide. It's something that can be seen, and it plays a key role on how other people view you when you are leading. So for me, I bring my whole self. When I think of authentic leadership, to me, bringing in your values, your experiences, as well as your identity into leadership rather than conforming into what the normal norm of what leadership look like. So again, as a Black man in a leadership position, each time I walk in a room, I walk in a space, I'm well aware of my identity and how I need to conform myself walking in, right? So whenever I speak and engage with people, again, my identity plays a key role because I have to be aware of my surrounding and how I show up.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Camaro. Michael, I have the same question for you, right? So just to kind of repeat it, what does your definition of authentic leadership mean to you? And how has your identity as a man really shaped your understanding of it? Go for it.
So thank you for that question. And my answer is going to mirror Dr. Caro's a little bit. For me, authentic leadership means being yourself and bringing your gifts to the table to solve a problem. I see myself as a servant leader. And by that, I mean being a good listener, leading with empathy. And when I'm at work, I really try to lead my team members by meeting their needs and empowering them to do big things and also becoming a leader. You know, sometimes at work, people may lead as an authoritarian, but I'm not like that. I really want to collaborate and connect with, all my team members. And I see that as important in getting the work done and solving the issues at hand.
Great. Thank you for that, Michael. Francisco, talk to us, please.
Yeah, authentic leadership to me poses the question, who's not in the room? So showing up as an authentic leader in the spaces that I'm in, which is typically team meetings with school counselors and administration or stakeholders in the students' lives. So with parents or community members who are peripheral to the school, meeting to see, remembering that I am a male, I'm white, I'm in my early 30s, and, I'm helping lead a school filled with younger people, people of different races and people of different genders than myself. So remembering who I'm representing in that space. And if there is healthy representation or diverse representation of those people in the room, then remembering that I might not be the person, trying to figure out how much I'm advocating, what I'm speaking on, what I'm listening to more than I'm speaking on, but having the salient parts of my identity, like Dr. Camaro said as well, be present and being aware of those and what space they hold in the room is essential to being authentic in my leadership.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Francisco. I think that one of the things that for me, when I think of this question, I think for me, authenticity is conditional. Any place, anytime, anywhere. And some people will be like, what are you talking about? So let me break that down. So for me, your point, Francisco, when you were saying, you show up to meetings, who's in the room, who's not in the room. So for me, being an authentic leader is being able to show up and have the permission to give the permission and have the permission to kind of say, we can have differences. And for me, authentic leadership is saying that don't shy away from those differences. I think the worst thing we can do is miss the opportunity to learn from each other. And I think for me, authentic leadership is about being able to say, you know what, I may not know this, but I want to know it and I want to understand it. And when, as a leader, it is your responsibility as an authentic leader, as a male leader, because sometimes to the point of who's not in the room, you want to pay attention who is in the room as well. Because I think that the piece for me is sometimes you don't know the people's experiences at that table before they get to that table. So to make assumptions that how I lead is what they are used to or not, right? This could be the first time they have a boss or a manager that actually allows them to be authentic because maybe it wasn't allowed before for whatever the reason, right? Together. That's such a missed opportunity. So that's what leadership, as far as authenticity, and being a male for me in spaces where most of the bosses are male, right? Sometimes, depending on the industry, you might have a team that is more female. But even that I think that for me, authenticity has to be about the permission to show up authentically, the permission to show up with differences, and the permission to learn from those differences. So that's what it means to me. The question I have is, as men, right, showing up in these spaces to support our allies, right? Most of the times when you look at the statistics of any given industry, most of the people leading these industries are men, right? Statistically, it's been proven, it's out there, the data's out there. So for me, as a male, as a cisgender male, to be specific, that is openly gay and is proud to be gay, it's really interesting that sometimes we talk about authenticity and the important value it has as a leader, but sometimes that permission to be isn't given. And somehow with that piece, it allows people to when we don't show up, when we don't show up truly in our authenticity, then what you're saying and demonstrating is that if I don't show up as a leader being authentic, neither should you, right? So if I'm skirting around as a leader, other people are going to skirt around because that's what the leader is modeling. So for the question that I want to piggyback off of this, can you share a moment when your social identities impacted how you showed up as a leader, a male leader specifically, if you don't mind?
So that's a great question. And this, again, piggyback on what I just talked about in terms of my own definition of authentic leadership, right? Bringing your whole self, who you are. I've been in higher education for over a decade now, and I could tell you that the people that mostly supervise me or my peers are mostly women.
Mm-hmm.
Or those that I supervise are women. At least that's my experience. I don't know much about anybody else's, right? For that reason, I found ways of showing up in those spaces to make sure that I give myself that permission to listen, to be an active listener in that space, and also affirm what other people also are saying, right, in terms of what they're sharing in those spaces. To a fault, right? At some point, I feel extremely conscious about my own identity to the point that I have something to share, but I hold on to it because of my own identity and the group of people that are in that space, as I shared earlier on. But when we go to places, I vividly remember a few years ago, we went to a conference in Connecticut, one of these high ed conferences where, again, the people that I went with were all women. The space was largely women, and automatically I don't think it was consciously done, but automatically I was called on to facilitate a discussion on group dialogue. So to me, that was extremely interesting. One, I was looked at the room and I clearly kind of understood why I was called, but I was surprised I was called again because this is higher ed and everybody's supposed to be extremely conscious about identity. But well, I went along with it. And the other piece or the other thing that came to mind that was playing my mind was my other identity as one, a Ghanaian American who has an accent, right? And also does as an immigrant in that space as well, right? Talking about equity and inclusion, because I've been in so many places where I've been outed saying, you have no idea what we've gone through as underrepresented folks in the United States. You are an immigrant. You don't understand that. So I was very conscious of that as well, asking me without preparing, right? Without any prior knowledge. So when I came to the room, pretty much to offset, to be able to engage in people's conversation and be able to facilitate that, I automatically started talking about my identity. Hi, my name is Kamara Abubakar, originally from Ghana, West Africa. So I had to put everything in perspective for people to understand who I am as an individual and that I'm not here to tell you what it means to be a person of color in that space, but rather from my own knowledge and experiences, I'm going to facilitate this conversation that way. Not only did it allow me to be more authentic in my conversation, it allowed other folks in the space, it set a precedent for other folks in the space to also lead with their own identity and talk about their identity even before responding to anything that's happening. So again, this is something that I picked up when I experienced it and I saw it worked for me. Every single place that I go now, if it's a new group of people that I'm engaging with, whether the room is diverse or not, I start with that, regardless of what the conversation is about, because I want people to understand who I am and opening it up to be authentic in terms of my conversation. So that's an example, but I can give so many examples of situations where I've been in that kind of space and started off by putting on the table my identity and being vulnerable. I'll put it that way, in that space.
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. K. That's all good, Dr. Camaro. I think that it really is interesting that you brought up that point. Sometimes when I show up in space, I ask myself, am I introducing myself in the way that I introduce myself because I want to, or is it because I have to? Because I think that if you don't share, this is my opinion, if you don't share up front, then people fill in the blank for you. Right. So I think that sometimes, especially when you walk in a room and you're one of a few, or if not the only one of fill in the blank as far as your representation. So I think that's always an interesting piece, that other people that might have names that are not different, other people who don't have the ethnicity that is different, they don't even have to worry about saying, I am so and so, and this is how I say my name, and this is what I do, and this is my friend, because I think that if we don't do that, then it gets done for us. You know what I'm saying? If we don't share that, then people will fill in the blanks for us. Do you find that to be true, or what do you think about that? And then I'll jump over to Michael and ask the same questions, and we can unpack the questions in the same way, all of us.
Yeah.
Dr. K, what do you think about that? Do you think
I
you want
think
to or have to?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel regardless of whether you say it or not, people will still fill in the blanks for you.
That's true.
But to limit that and have people focus on exactly what you're trying to say helps a lot. So for me, I know I have an accent. And when I get frustrated or when I get caught up in situations, my accent becomes thicker.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I want you to focus on what I'm saying and less on my accent. So I'll rather bring it out early, so that people will know, yeah, he already has it. We know it. Now let's focus on what he's saying, because my goal is for you to hear me, understand what I'm saying, and don't feel bad asking me for a follow-up question and say, can you clarify what you just said? Right? Because some people, because they want to be socially inclusive, they'll say, I don't want to re-ask them to re-say whatever they said or whatever it is, because I might be offending them. No, I want you to feel comfortable because I already told you, right, that I have it, and I know some people might not understand. So it's up to you at that point. So opening it up for people to actually feel free is good. So it's not only for them. I don't have to, but I feel like I want people to know early in order for me to move on with whatever I need to do.
Okay. Well, thank you for diving in a little bit more with that, because I was always curious, especially when, like, some people, to your point, some people can't hide, or some people not even hide. It's just you stand out, right? And I'm not saying for good or bad. It's just we stand out because we're not part of what the norm, quote unquote, dominant landscape is at that point in time. So I was really curious. So thank you for kind of engaging in that. Michael, what are your thoughts, right? What are your thoughts on, again, a moment when your social identity really kind of impacted how you showed up as a leader?
Yeah, for me, a couple of big points is when we're in a lot of rooms, right?
Yes.
And a lot of times there's diversity in the room, but you may be on the lesser side of that. And what I try to do before I go into those spaces is kind of recognize that may be the case, but always come in prepared and kind of, scan the room, do a lot of listening to see how people are engaging, and try to add value to the conversations and be a leader in my space, right? And bring my skill sets, my expertise, and things like that to the conversation and demonstrate that I do have value to add in those situations.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes 100% sense. And I think yeah, I think that it's preparing. I always say, know your audience, right? So when you're walking into a room, have an idea of who your audience is, because I think that helps us prepare in a certain kind of way. At least that's what I think. Francisco, what do you think? Or can you share with us, like, a moment when your social identity kind of impacted how you showed up as well?
Yeah, definitely. I like how much talk there is about preparation. I think all four of us have mentioned that so far. And you think about, your social identity and how to prepare your social identity. It's interesting, just kind of ruminating on what you guys have been saying the last couple minutes. It's a lot of inward work.
Yes.
It makes me think about, right? It's like a lot of just internal work prior to you showing up to the table and, doing the work that's got to get done. It makes me think about a time I had with my barber when I had hair. Dr.
What do you
Kamaro
mean by
knows.
that?
I know, Francisco, I feel you. I
That's
feel you.
it. We're saving a lot of money now though, right?
Yes.
That's funny. I'm laughing with.
So back when I had hair, I had my barber. He was this cool guy. His name was Tuan. He always wore orange shades when he was cutting my hair. That was just his thing. And one day I just noticed that he was doing all kinds of mess to my sides. He didn't fade me up the right way. And I was like, oh man. But I didn't say anything to him while he was cutting my hair. I just kind of could know. And I wore glasses at the time, so I couldn't really see in the mirror what he was doing. And I was like, oh. And so when he was finished, I told him, hey man, next time, maybe don't, take so much off the sides. And he was like, dude, why didn't you tell me that when I was cutting your hair? Like you could have just stopped me. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. I just, I felt bad. I didn't want, you have the buzzers on my head. I don't want you to mess me up even worse, whatever. And we started laughing about it, but he was like, no, but you can't do that. You have to interrupt me if I'm not doing the thing that you want me to do. Because if you don't provide an interruption, and this kind of got out of the haircut, but he was giving me a life lesson at this point. He's like, if you don't speak on things that you don't agree with, you're going to let people get to uninformed conclusions.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's like a really good point. Yeah. And so I internalized this life lesson from the barber about providing interruptions for when people are going down a road I know they might not like the result and the destination. And so when I'm in school meetings or when I'm leading a facilitation with teachers about how they can their best selves when they show up for their students, I know that their intention is to show up and be the best that they can be. However, if we're in staff meetings with policy development or we're talking about what might be best for one particular student, and I'm very much not agreeing with what's going on, as a leader showing up, being prepared to say, hey, in terms of race, especially because a lot of the schools I work in are predominantly white teachers, is saying, guys, I think we need to check ourselves as a pretty homogeneous racial group as educators and say, this might not work for these kids. And so providing that interruption under the assumption that they want to be the best professionals they want to be. But doing that goes back to preparation. You have to prepare yourself every time you go get a haircut to be ready to tell your barber, hey, dude, stop. I don't like that.
Right.
Because if you don't psych yourself up a little bit for it, you're going to let yourself get a bad lineup, just like you would in your, in a meeting, and result might not be great.
So what you're saying is the fade isn't going to fade. The fade wasn't fading. So what you're saying,
right, yeah,
pretty much the fade was not fading.
Right.
Okay, I get it. I can truly appreciate the barbershop reference analogy because who here hasn't sat in a barbershop and engaged in really interesting conversations? You can learn a lot. You're willing to listen and engage, right? And I think that you bring a very valid point, Francisco, in relation to the whole piece on, don't make assumptions, ask questions, be respectful in asking the questions, and be okay with not understanding and knowing something, right? And saying that, because I think we're taught, like from a very early age, before we can even put a sentence together, what does it mean to be a male? You're strong, you're quiet, and you handle business. I'm just paraphrasing. Those are three quick ones that I know have been instilled in me. You're a provider, you're the head of the house, like all those pieces, even though some of those thoughts might be a little old fashioned and some people may not agree, but that's the culture. As far as for me being raised, those are the things that you do. And I think that if we are not ready to ask the right questions, because I've always said the best response is one that is, no, let me flip that around. The best questions result in the best responses, right? So if you don't know how to ask the question, then that response might not be what you think you're looking for because you didn't prepare, right? That question in a way, in a more intentional way versus a reactive way. At least that's been my experience. So I really appreciate that, how you laid that out and layered it. So thank you for that. The question, if it's okay, I want to move on to the next group. The next question for the group is, Francisco, I'm going to start off with you, if that's okay. How do you handle being either the the ally, or when you walk through a space and you notice that there's only one of either a man of color or a disabled man or any other marginalized, underrepresented populations. How do you handle being in that space I can say with me being white skin privileged, right? That I can show up. But how do you show up? I'm just curious, if you don't mind. Let's engage in that.
So if I'm the only other person I perceive to be like a white ally in the room, you're
Yeah,
saying?
either a white ally or the other way too, right? So I'm saying you walk into a
Or
room.
if I'm a white person in the room and there's only one person who is of color in the room.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
That's exactly it. And then,
Yeah,
how do you kind of show up for them, knowing that
sure.
that show up might not be in our best interests as being, either an
Right.
ally. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course. So listen, so in that space, I'd listen for opportunities to amplify a voice without, directing the spotlight onto that person to speak for themselves, but creating a, a space in the conversation, creating a topic where there could be more engagement without, calling too much attention to the one person in the room that doesn't look like the rest. And then also, creating like fully listening to what people in the room have to say and creating a needs list from what was heard. And if it doesn't feel like the group, is able to listen or is listening fully, or if that one person's point is kind of being trampled over,
Mm.
bringing it back to that point and saying, if it's right, saying like, hey, look at this is also being said. How can we incorporate that into our action plan or into, whatever the purpose of this meeting is, to center that essentially.
Right. So pretty much bringing the attention back to the meat of the conversation versus around the conversation. Because again, I think part
Yeah.
of what some people feel is some people, which to me, this is something that always puzzles me. And I'm not saying leaders need to be confrontational, because that's not what I'm saying. But it's really interesting, as leaders, expect some kind of engagement, right? That there's going to be some kind of disagreement,
Right.
because that's just the nature of the beast as far as leaders. But I also think that part of that is sometimes when they are either being an ally or being the only one, right, in the room,
Hmm.
it's really interesting, because when that person tries to say something, right, and then that person all of a sudden, it's what they say is taken somewhere in a whole nother direction that has nothing to do with what was said.
Yeah,
What
you got to
it
bring it
does
back.
is it turns that person, they shut down, right? And then
Hmm.
you wonder, like, well, why isn't this person
Right.
engaging? So yeah, I think that's a
So
very
making sure
valid
the
lens.
boundaries of what they said was very clear, making sure that,
Correct.
hey, listen, like, I don't know if that might just be kind of like a very broad assumption or paraphrase, whereas that's not really what the person said. Is there any room for clarification, to give them, using, I think also in terms of being a man, it might feel different if masculinely presented.
Yes.
Because if a woman
Yes.
is doing that, it may or may not come off as serious of a centering.
Yeah. No, you bring a very valid point. I really appreciate that, Francisco. Michael, what do you think? Like, how do you handle like being the only one or the few? But it's interesting, because depending on where you live, depending on your work, depending on your environment, right? So I'm sure where you work, that's not the case. I'm assuming, right? And that's okay, because I don't know better, but that's why we're talking, right? Because guess what? If I'm assuming, there are a bunch of other people out there in the audience that also might assume. So whether it's at John Hopkins or whether it's somewhere else, say you're in the community event and you happen to walk in, and because you're, the director of community engagement for all, not for one or the other, right? How does this show up for you in your work that you do?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I was thinking about this as you guys were discussing it, and it really starts with listening to the conversation, seeing how it's going, and then inviting in diverse opinions. And so that could be by race, it could be by gender, it could be based on background as well. In thinking about it in the community, it could be based on income, it could be based on where folks live in the city and what they bring to the table, and just
100%.
making sure that you have diverse voices that are part of the decisions that are being made, so that more people can benefit from those decisions.
Right. Yeah, that makes 100% sense. And I think that you're right. I think again, the permission, I'm a big permission person. So the permission, because sometimes that's what it feels like we need, which is unusual unto itself, but that's what it feels like sometimes. The permission to kind of say, acknowledging that sometimes being the only one or the first one, it may sound really nice on paper. It may sound really nice when somebody says it. But if you don't ask that person, hey, what's it like to be the first Latinx person in that position that you hold? Or what's it like to be African American? What's it like to be a male? What's it like to be a female? Fill in, what's it like to be the first person in your family to go to college and land this kind of job? Fill in the blank, right? So I think that for me, it's also very important that we have to be able to create these spaces to ask and approach and acknowledge that when that happens, we should be acknowledging it as opposed to just glossing over it, again, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've all been in spaces also where no one wants to be the first one to speak up,
Yeah.
right? Or no one wants to be on an
Yes.
island with their thought, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
sometimes as a leader, if you've been listening in the room, you kind of know what people are thinking and what voices need to be added to the conversation. If you can create space so that you can have that diversity of voices, it's really important.
Right. Right. Yeah. Very fair and on point.
You give great scenarios and examples of where this can of what you could do. So for me, I love this. I live it. It makes me excited. Again, because usually I'm the only one in the space, right? When conversations are happening, it gives me the perspective and it gives me the opportunity to talk about, I'm not representing everybody that look like me. However, being able to talk about my own perspective on things that I've experienced and how a policy or something that's going to be created is not going to favor the folks or the students that we are serving. Right. I've worked in, predominantly white institutions my entire career. And a lot of the times, again, administration is not entirely favoring those underrepresented folks in leadership or in rooms that make those decisions. So when I find myself in those spaces, I make sure that they hear me out.
Right.
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 And sometimes they say you're talking a lot, but yeah, because I want you to hear me out. The other piece also is, and this goes back to what Francisco shared a little bit, right? So for me, when I'm going to be an ally in a space and somebody shares something, and it happened to me too personally, where I say something and people say different things, and then somebody will say the same thing that I've said, and then
Yes.
everybody will be like,
It's a bright idea.
and then I look
Yeah.
over my shoulder and I'm like, I just said that
Yeah.
5 minutes ago, right?
Yep.
But when I see those things happen, usually I go back and say, as Mary was saying,
Yes. Yes.
then I try to echo that again for everybody to hear. Well, Mary said it 5 minutes ago.
Right. Yes.
It's bringing the person back in to the fold of the conversation. So Mary will feel that at least somebody in the room is listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And their voice then be shutting down. Once in a while, I've had people do that for me in spaces. And if what I said sometimes is taken out of context and people are just talk, and I've had somebody will say, well, I don't think that's what Kamara was saying. I think this is what he was
Yes.
referring to.
Yes.
Kamara, would you mind elaborating more on what you said, if you don't mind?
Correct.
Yeah. So
Correct.
things like that. So that's how you show, for me, that's how I show up for others. And that's how I show up representing myself in spaces too.
That's
Yeah,
powerful.
That's very powerful. Yeah, because again, part of it is that, again, the permission piece, right? So if you are seeing somebody gaslit right in front of you, for me, it's like, well, I want to ask to make sure that they're okay, that they don't feel like I'm putting them on the spot, right? Because they're already feeling like they're shutting down because they're now being gaslit, right? So I think for me, I always ask that too. I usually say, well, wait a minute, can I share what I heard slightly different than what I'm hearing everyone talk about? Is it okay for me to share that? and then go into exactly what you just talked about, Kamaro, because I think that part of it is, for me, that's how you build up that person, as opposed to that's not what I heard, and not really acknowledging that that person is looking, you can tell that they're uncomfortable a certain kind of way, right? So I think for me, the showing up really is kind of building them up in a way that to kind of say that what you said, this is what I understood, even though everyone else is saying they understood something differently, and then to kind of affirm it. Is that what you meant? Right? Again, and then give them back the mic. And if they shut it down again, then that's a different conversation, right? So that's a different conversation with the group. But you also have to know when to cut that conversation off, right? The timing is everything. And if it's shutting down, it makes no sense to continue at that moment. You can pause it and then bring it back up at another time, I think. So yeah, I commend you for that. For, again, making sure that the person feels like they do have a voice and an ally, especially when you're in a room. Like Kamara, yours might be different because you're working more with females in your current space, right? But there's been other spaces where I feel like as men, Francisco, I think, did you mention it, or somebody was mentioned about like the manliness of it all, right? The manhood of it all, those types. Yeah. The masculinity piece. Like, how does it show up, right? There's masculinity and there's toxic masculinity, right? Which one are you, right? It's so, masculinity could be okay if you understand what that means. If you understand that holds a lot of power, whether you realize it or not. And slinging it around then can become toxic, right? When unchecked. That's anything. So I think that's really important. What's institutional practices, mentorships, sponsorships, and flexible work that have been really most effective for you? And what do you still think it's missing?
Yeah. So if I understand the question correctly, I'll answer it how I'm interpreting it. So like our institutions are pretty dry. It's a pretty low context culture. You show up to work, you have to wear a certain thing. You got to be on time, regardless of what your family is like or, what you ran into that day. There's not a lot of, you just show up and you're supposed to do the thing. There's not a lot of space for human emotion, right? And so I'm going into different roles, different professional roles that are expecting me to show up and leaving part of my humanity kind of at the door, right? And part of that preparational piece, right, is for me, part of that preparational piece has been to remember how to sneak that part of my humanity like in my laptop bag or my backpack when I come to work and not forget about specifically what makes me angry. And because that's how I can get good at what I do, is remembering why I'm doing it for. And those things sometimes make me angry. I had a mentor in Harlem. She passed last year, but her name was Kathy Bristow. And I met her probably in my early 20s. And she really helped me. Like, she received that anger. She mentored me through it and never said it was wrong. And it was anger about like some of the socio-political things that were happening and, in the earlier, the 2000 teens and early 2020s. There's just a lot of stuff about the nation that can get you mad.
Yes.
And while I'm, while I'm working in schools and seeing different amounts of injustice happening on like a very small level and like tones with people in my profession or with systemic problems, some of that stuff charges you up. And she showed me how empowering it could be to bring those parts of you to the roles that you are expected to, fulfill professionally. And so figuring out how to bring that with me and also let it drive me without having others be driven away was a big part of how I can show up as a man. Because sometimes masculine anger can be a lot to process.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's right. I don't think that it's something that should go completely, I don't think it should be completely forgotten. I think that there's just a way to present it in a professional way that can also empower you to be a great leader.
Yeah, you bring up a very valid point because masculinity in itself, most people kind of have their own version of what that is, right? And then you throw in your culture, and that's a whole nother layer, right? That kind of adds to it, right? Because what one culture says might be toxic, the other one's like, no, it's not. This is fine. Again, because every culture approaches it differently. And then you take the individual and how they interpret it, right? And then their own isms kick in, right? Our own isms kick in is what I say. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Michael, same question. what practices, what institutional practices, mentorship, sponsorship, and flexible work have been most effective in supporting your growth? And what do you think is still missing for you?
Yeah, so for me, as I look back on my career, one thing that was missing for me, and it's completely my fault, is not having a mentor early in my career. Someone who's more experienced
Yes.
that could have been a guiding voice or to bounce some ideas off of. And I think some of that comes from is sort of culturally or
Yes.
some gender-based things, thinking that, oh, I can do it myself, or there's something wrong with me if I can't figure it out myself. Now, as an older person and someone who's raising kids or has raised kids, my kids are all young adults now, those are things that I have tried to instill to them to, be able to do things on their own, but recognizing that you don't know everything and that
Yes.
everybody needs help at some time,
Right.
and look for people that are doing the things that you want to do or have done the things that you want to do, and ask questions, and don't be afraid to seek mentors out, and because there's lots of people that do want to help. I know now
Yes.
I've been asked by a few different young people to do that for them, and I truly enjoy doing it. And I know that could have been something that could have been beneficial to me earlier, being on the other side of it. In terms of what works for me now is in my job, I truly try to take advantage of every educational or networking opportunity, no matter how big or how small, just finding ways to expand my knowledge about the things that I'm interested in, whether it's specifically work related or it's something personal. To be fortunate enough to have a job that has tuition reimbursement, tuition remission, lots of workshops because I work at a university.
Yeah.
There's always something going on, and just trying to take advantage of those things are all truly important.
Perfect. Gracias, Miguel. Michael, Dr. Camaro,
Yeah.
same
So,
question to you, sir.
mine is slightly kind of different. So, you made mention about the cultural piece.
Yes.
Again, growing up, I grew up in Ghana again. So for me, I didn't have that mindset of looking for one particular person as a mentor. Right. I grew up in a community where everybody that's older than you, that's around you, you can learn something from and you can bounce ideas from. So I have a lot of mentors in the
So
United
cool.
States and in my career, pretty much each individual person that I've met in my career path had something unique to play in my growth. So I can give you 20 names. You would call all 20 people. All of them would tell you that they are my mentors. The
That's so
reason
cool.
being that they have specific qualities or things that I admire about them. So I reach out to them when I need those kind of support. So I cannot give you one person and say, this is the person who guided me from day one until now. And that kind of changes as time goes on, depending where my life and whatnot. In my current position, institution, I also, like Michael, I work on a college campus. I look for any opportunity that I could get to get a certificate, get a,
Yes.
workshop, training, whatever
Yep.
it is, right?
Yep.
I take those opportunities to continue to develop myself as an individual in those capacity. And my upbringing, again, in terms of reaching out to multiple people for support and guidance, helps me in my work, because whatever I'm doing or any tasks that I've been provided or given to do, I look around me and see who can I tap into
Right.
to
Right.
bring in for me to do this work. You will barely see me doing something by myself. There's some level of fulfillment when you do it by yourself and you succeed and everybody's saying, Kamari did this. But 99% of the time, I'll come up with a core concept, but actual execution of the whatever it is, program, event, whatever it is, I tap into a lot of people specifically, and I'm very strategic with that. And yeah, so that's how I use it in my line of work, and also when it comes to mentorship and leadership.
Yeah. I find it fascinating in a really positive and hopeful, right, way that you had a village of mentors instilled in your upbringing without even understanding what it is until years later. So think, they they modeled, that's the word I was looking for. They modeled what does it mean to be a mentor? Because I think, how we in America, United States, define mentors could be slightly different than someone who isn't born here, right? So I think for me, when I hear of different mentors and different stories of like what is a mentor to people from different places, it's fascinating. I think for me, what I feel is important when it comes to the mentoring piece is the sponsoring piece, right? So you have your mentors who want to help you, but then you have the sponsors that say, hey, I have a project that I want you to work on so that you can actually actively, activate that mentorship, right? Into a sponsorship, right? The action of moving it. I think what's still missing for me, what I've seen is more formal mentors in the pipeline. Right. I think most people I know, not all, but most people I know who have mentors, they kind of tripped into their mentors. They accidentally met their mentors. It was just the right time and the right place, right?
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
opposed to having a system to say, you know what, when you get to, say, for those who go to post-secondary education, let's say your freshman year, right? We're going to pair you with somebody who is going to mentor you and sponsor you for the first semester. And literally, like, I'm not talking about buddy system. I'm talking about someone who has been wherever. It could be a campus, it could be the job, someone who's been there, who's successful there, and is willing, there's the key here, willing to share their knowledge to pay it forward, right? Some aren't, but those who are, for me, I just wish that we had a more formal mechanism as opposed to accidentally tripping into a mentor that would sponsor you. I know that's what happened to me my whole career. And I've been very lucky and fortunate, but I know most of the people I know, it's the same thing. I think when I did my dissertation, interviewed 10 college presidents. Out of those 10 college presidents, there was only, I want to say 2 or 3 out of the 10 that said I had a formal mentor. Everybody else, it was the mentor saw them before they saw themselves even needing a mentor. Does that make sense? So I think that's fascinating. And I really wish for me that we could just create a more formal structure. And maybe that's what we do, right? As opposed to hoping by chance that you trip onto the right mentor that's going to sponsor you. I think that's a chance that we shouldn't take, in my opinion, because that's the difference between doors opening and doors closing. At least that's what I've seen in my life and my career. What I like to do is I want to ask the last question, right? And Kamaro, I'm going to jump to you. And then from you, if you could pass it along to Michael, then Francisco, and then I'll wrap us up. Is that okay?
Okay,
So
sure.
the last question I have is finish this sentence. Ready? To be a male leader in today's workforce world means what to you? Again, no right or wrong, just like the reflection of it all.
I have a lot of words, so I'm trying to choose one that's to be empathetic,
Yes.
to be somebody who is an active listener, and also being conscious of your voice and what you say. Right. I'm specifically saying the idea of voice again because I know I have how do you call it? I have a loud, whatever they call it. I don't know how I'm going to put it, but my voice is loud, right? So when I'm speaking, I know I command the room. And for somebody, it's going to be more of why is he loud? Why is he yelling at me? Yelling. So I have to watch my tone of voice and how I say it. And because if you don't watch it and you say it, right, depending on what you say, it can come off as you are being authoritative, Michael.
Yes.
We don't want that, right? That's why it can be more of like inserting yourself on others to do what you want them to do. So yeah, so I'll put it that way. That's a short version of it, but I can go on and on. Yeah.
That's a whole nother panel.
Yes.
Thank you, Kamaro. Michael, why don't you jump in, please?
Yes, I had a couple of adjectives.
Yes.
Being strong yet humble, being bold yet empathetic, also being trustworthy and ethical, leading with character and being authentic. I think we all touched on some of those adjectives tonight, but I think those all together is what it means to be a male leader today.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Francisco, jump in, por favor.
Yeah. So although we don't have to, fend off, large animals and like protect our direct family unit anymore as men,
Right. Right.
I do think that there is a kind of biological, if DNA has, memory and there's generational like ties throughout our manhood throughout the millions of years or whatever. I do think that creating an environment of not just physical, but psychological safety in a work environment is something we need to, that we're responsible for in part. And so to me, a kind of a mashup of what Michael and Dr. Komarov said is balancing, standing firm on your principles while also adapting to the needs that might be changing and finding that line while providing a psychological safety for everybody that works in your workplace.
All right. Gracias, señor. Muchas gracias. So for me, I think for me to be a male leader in today's workforce, I think to me, one of the most important characteristics a leader should have is just awareness. Like, don't be so myopic in your view that because that's what you're good at, that's the only thing you sit in. And you're so proud, and there's nothing wrong with being proud, right? With this is what I know, and nobody can tell me differently. Okay, great. But that's a dangerous place to stay as a leader. So I think for me, awareness to me is really important. I believe that and I talked about it earlier, permission, right? The permission to understand that I may not know it all, but I'm going to find out who does, and we're going to work together to get it done, right? So the permission to really throw perfection out the window, but what we should all be really focusing on is what we do as men, what is our social impact at our workplace in the communities where we show up. I think for me, that's very important. I also think that all leaders should have enough curiosity to always want to learn. And that means being uncomfortable when we don't know something. And then we have to, as leaders, we want to fix things because that's why we lead. And it's just very natural for us to like want to fix it as opposed to slowing down and try to understand why. And what am I supposed to learn from this so I don't see this again next week, right? So I think for me, those are very important that I feel is what it means to be a man, a leader in a space, because I think there are so many other assumptions made that we have to tell the narrative in a way that doesn't say that, we want people to be part of that narrative and not us dictating the narrative. At least that's my opinion for what it's worth. So to me, that's important. Before we start segueing into signing off tonight, one quick question I have for everybody is the following. Do you feel that there's anything that you would like to mention? Or at this point, what I like to do is ask my guests to put out a call to action. And what a call to action for those audience members out there is just basically after all of us leave these cubicles on the screen, we go about our business. So for me, the question I have for everybody, what is your call to action? And call to action means, what do you want people to do with the information that we've exchanged? This was just an engagement that what I hope that people can actually walk away with some kind of nuggets, something new, a fresh perspective, right? So for me, I just want to understand what you feel is your call to action to people out there watching this video who might be curious enough to do something once they watch this. Let's start off with Dr. Kamaro.
Great. So again, with the conversation that we just had is our own narrative, right? Our understanding of what leadership is based on our own identity, our social construction, our origin. Therefore, what we shared today is not the complete narrative of each and everyone, but a tool that people can also use to be conscious on how they lead and exist. My call for action pretty much is, which was one of the questions that you asked us, right, about the allyship and how to show up for others who are not in the space. It means a lot, not only to build our society, but also to and make sure that we are being more equitable and socially just in the way we serve and what we do in general. As somebody who works in higher education, this means a lot to me because of the population that I work with. And we are developing young adults in our spaces. Therefore, we have to role model how and what we want them to learn and get out of our way of providing them with the service and the leadership that we overseeing in terms of institution-wide. So for me is try to be there for others who do not have the voice. We live in a very interesting time right now where people's voices have been lost in so many ways. They cannot talk the way we are talking right now. They don't have the freedom to even engage in meaningful conversations. So be there for people, be there for others. And that would go a long way to help everybody in the society.
Right. Gracias, Dr. Camaro. Michael, what's your call to action to the audience members out there?
My call to action is to find someone who looks like you, reach out to them and kind of create a space where you can have a conversation with them about what's going on in their life and in their career, and truly listen to them and share and kind of create a little community there, but then also invite others into that conversation as well who don't look like you. And I think that could go a long way for us really to build a community together where people are listening and people are willing to work together for the benefit of all.
Awesome. Gracias, Señor. Francisco, your perspective, your call to action to the audience, please.
Absolutely. So to any of our audience members who look like me racially, our white folks who might be watching, as Michael just said, create outreach to someone who looks like you and talk to them about, your ideas and your thoughts, but also challenge yourself. So my call would be for us white people to listen more, make assumptions less, and get curious, but answer some of that curiosity ourselves and with each other and really dig into it. And I would say, honestly, if you add 3 years to your life now, I would imagine yourself in 3 years and say, I will dedicate these next 3 years to really digging into my racial identity. You will come out a much different and happier person if you can examine parts of those parts of who you are. You'll just be way happier. And other people, like Michael said, finding other people who look like you can help.
Yeah, I thank you, gentlemen. I think for me, the call to action in relating to this topic, it's really interesting, right? Because I think that I 100% understand, find the people like you, to do the mentoring piece. But I would actually push it a little bit more. I would say, look for people who you don't know, for people you may not feel comfortable with because you don't know them. And what you know about them, it's something you might have heard. And on the internet, because we all know the internet is so reliable, right? Because the internet said it's true, right? But that's not the case. It's people have to do a little bit more, right? I understand that people are busy. But to my brothers out there, pay attention to the spaces we show up, right? And make sure that if you're the leader and you happen to be male, make sure that you're creating that space that you talked about, Francisco, about the psychological safety, right? You want people and you want to give them the space to understand that agreeing to disagree is an opportunity to learn from each other. An opportunity for both of us that we don't have to change our minds, but it might give us a different perspective. And maybe we might not be so quick to rush to a decision. And for me, I would challenge everyone out there to take the opportunity to simply be curious enough to ask a question, especially when it comes to culture, especially when it comes to norms, especially when it comes to race, especially when it comes to gender, especially when it comes to what does it mean to be the first? Right. So for me, that is my call to action. So, gentlemen, muchas gracias. Yeah. So, like, as we wrap up today, I think was a great conversation. I want to really pause again and extend my deepest gratitude to you all, right? To the panelists. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your brilliance. Thank you for the expertise and really for sharing both your professional and lived experiences, because some people have the idea that we have to separate those two. And I say that when you do that, you're missing the opportunity to really understand what does it mean to see the whole person and not just the transactional aspect of a person. So I think for me, sharing both the professional lived experiences that you all brought today in this discussion to life was commendable. And I want to say thank you, because your authenticity and courage really helps pave the way for more inclusive, equitable workplaces and conversations. We're not here to change anybody's mind. We are here to give them information and do what they need to do, because we are talking to adults. And we all know adults don't like to be told what to do. But what I want to say is just listen and maybe listen for something that maybe makes you feel uncomfortable. And I would ask everybody, ask yourself, why am I uncomfortable? As opposed to gaslighting the person in front of you. So I want to make sure that everyone out there just take that opportunity to ask the right questions. In closing, really your presence and willingness to engage in reflections are what really makes this Conversation Cafe live panel a true community space. So again, today we're marking the second of our 4-part Conversation Cafe series, and we hope that you out there will join us with our next journey. Our next panel, this particular recording will be available, I mentioned it earlier, on September 29th on YouTube and Spotify. And what I'm hoping for is that you out there, the audience, join us for our third of 4 panels in leadership, authenticity, and social identities in the workplace, the non-binary perspective. That's going to take place on Thursday, October 30th at the same time between 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So in order to continue to build on today's conversation and to continue to explore leadership and systemic equities in meaningful ways. So with that being said, again, muchas gracias, adios, and I hope audience members come and talk to us, come and talk with us. Panelists, before we hop off, lastly, if people want to reach you, how do they reach you? I want to talk to Dr. Camaro first, Michael, and then Francisco. Go for it. So how can the audience get in contact with you?
I can just give my email. So it's kamaro.abubakar@gmail.com. That would be the easiest way to find me. Yeah, I put it that way.
Okay. Thank you. Miguel, Michael.
Yep. Email is good for me as well. My first initial and the beginning of my last name, the number 12 at jhu.edu. It's MPREST 12 at jhu.edu.
So that's a rhyme. That's pretty cool. Francisco, please.
You can find me on email as well at f.angelo1865 at gmail. That's f.angelo1865 at gmail, or franciscoangelo.com.
Perfect. And audience members, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me through our website, which is www.avantcnt.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm across other platforms as well. But LinkedIn, I'm pretty active. So if anything, you can find me there. And you can also email me. My email it's on the name tag here, Gauthier-Zayas @AvantC. With that being said, we are done for this panel. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to more conversations in the future. Adios, everyone.
Good night.